Hello and welcome back. Today is day 1 of our solving quadratics unit. Today we will learn the zero product property. Just a reminder, a copy of the handout is provided in the description below for you to follow along. Enjoy. Oh yeah, it's that time again. We have some math problems here and we need you to do them now. Pause the video, complete the problems, and return to the video when you're done. All right, let's go over this do now. So now when I'm solving these problems, I'm looking at these equations, I'm trying to figure out to myself, what values of x will make these equations true? So what number, and then when I say value, I mean value or values. That means there could be more than one answer than that would make this equation true. So when you look at this first problem, problem number 1, x plus 5 equals 0, what number for x can you substitute in to make this equation true? So what does x have to be so that some number plus 5 equals 0? Well, I know the answer is going to be negative 5. Negative 5 plus 5 will make 0. So I know that's my solution. Now, how do we do this mathematically? Well, we've learned how to solve equations. We would just subtract 5 from both sides, and that would give me x is equal to negative 5. So that's one solution, one way to solve this problem. What about number 2? X squared is equal to 25. So again, I'm thinking, what number or numbers would make this true? Well, I know that 5 squared has to equal 25, so there's one answer right there. But again, sometimes these are tricky because there could be more than one answer. So is there another value that you can substitute in here that would give you 25? Yes, of course. There is negative 5, because negative 5 times negative 5 would equal to positive 25. So I know for this problem we have two solutions. We have two numbers that would make this equation true. Now, how do we do that mathematically though? How do we show that work? Well, we just take the square root of both sides. And what we probably learned from our classes that when we do that, we better have a plus and a minus. You're going to have a positive value and a negative value. So in this problem, the answer is the square root of plus or minus square root of 25. And if I simplify that, I get plus or minus 5. Now, you are going to see this symbol written a lot, the plus and the minus. It just tells us that we have two answers. We have a positive answer, so we have a positive 5 as one answer, and we have a negative 5 as another answer. All right, so those are my solutions. But now, what about in problem number 3 over here? What numbers would make this true? Well, if I'm looking at this problem, well, I should be thinking that, the cool thing about this problem is if we can figure out what would make the first binomial to be a 0, what value would give me a 0 for this one? Well, 0 times anything will just make me 0. Or the second term, we'll do this one first. So look at this, the first binomial, look at this little first one right here. What number can we substitute in to make a 0 for this one? So some number plus 5 equals 0. Well, same thing we did earlier. We just plug in a negative 5, so negative 5 plus 5 is equal to 0. But now, do I even need to worry about the rest of the problem? No, because 0 times anything is just going to be 0. So we know one solution is negative 5. Now, how do we actually do this in our class? How do we actually write this down? And you're going to learn about it in a second, but this is called the zero product property. So I'll just abbreviate it, ZPP. And that means that we're going to set each one of these equal to 0. So we'll set our left binomial equal to 0, and we'll solve that problem. So we solve that real quick, and we get negative 5. So my answer for this one is x is equal to negative 5. That's one solution. But we can use the zero product property also to what is the other solution? What will make this other one true? Because again, anything times 0 should equal 0. So what other value would work for this problem? Well, let's just use the zero product property again and set this one equal to 0 and solve that equation. So when you do that, add 5 to both sides, your answer is x is equal to 5, and game over. So I have two answers. I have a negative 5 that would work, and I also have a positive 5 that will work for this one. All right, so again, this whole chapter, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be solving these problems. You're going to use the zero product property often, and let's talk a little bit more about that next. The zero product property. The zero product property simply states that if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0. Let me just write this out real quick. So if A times B, let's call this A, let's call this B. Either one has to be 0. So this is kind of what we saw a second ago. So if A is 0, then we know that 0 times something would have to be 0. Let's just put 0 times anything will equal 0. Or, and it has the word or there, so we also should know that we can switch this around the other way. Maybe the second binomial has to equal 0, and 0 times anything would also equal 0. So that's all the zero product property is saying. All right, so how do we use that? Let's try this for a problem right here. So solve and check. So what we're going to do is this thing is already factored out. So we're going to set this term equal to 0, and then we are going to set this term equal to 0. So I'm going to set 2x minus 5 equal to 0. Using my zero product property, I like to write it just for a couple times until we see and get used to it. And then I'll solve that problem. So how do we solve this? Simple algebra. 2x is equal to 5. Divide both sides by 2. And we have one of our solutions. One of my solutions is 5/2. Done. Now use the zero product property again, and let's set the other binomial equal to 0. So set x minus 4 equal to 0, and then solve that one. Quick and simple, that should be done in one step. And we're left with x is equal to 4. So these are my two solutions, this or this. So as you're going through this right now, what I'm going to want you to do, and we're going to do it for a little while until we just get better at it. Again, it works on our number skills. It works on especially some of our answers to be fractions. But later on, you'll be able to solve all these problems. Basically, the zero product property, you'll just do that mental math, and that'll be fun and simple for you. All right, but let's check our work. Let's check to make sure those are the values that would make this equal to 0. So I said that one of my solutions has to be x equals 5/2. So let's check to see if that is true. So how do we check it? Let's just substitute it in. And I'm going to substitute right there. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to substitute a 5/2 in there. So I'm going to substitute a 5/2 here where there's an x, and I'm going to substitute a 5/2 here where there's an x, and let's see what we get. What's 2 times 5/2? Well, that is just going to be a 5. So 5 minus 5. And I am not even going to work with whatever's here. I'm not even going to do anything in this other parenthesis, because what do I notice already? What's 5 minus 5? 0. So does it matter what happens in this parenthesis? Does this even matter what happens here? Do I even care? No, because 0 times anything will just be 0. So guess what? This is one of my solutions. 5/2 is the solution. What about my other solution? Is x equal to 4 another solution? So let's check this value. Again, I know you're going to be a little annoyed for a while, but I really want you to check your work. I really want you to prove to yourself that these are solutions. And again, this shouldn't take too long. It shouldn't be too bad. So again, everywhere I see an x, I'm going to substitute a 4 in. So I see an x there. Okay. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put a 4 and a 4. And now on this problem, I'm not even going to work on this little problem right here. It doesn't even matter, because what happens over here in the second parenthesis? What's 4 minus 4? 0. And what is 0 times any number over there? Well, that's still 0. So guess what? This problem works. All right, so that's the zero product property. That's what we're learning today. And let's try some problems. We actually use this property. Well, let's try it with problem number 1. Once you see how to do it, you'll be like, oh, that's pretty simple. But the first thing I should notice is that this is a trinomial. I have 3 terms right there. It does not look like what we saw earlier. It doesn't look like I can use my zero product property, because obviously there's nothing being multiplied here. I want 2 terms, but you know what? Your whole last chapter, that's all you did was learn how to factor. So you learn how to take your trinomial and turn it into 2 binomials, a product of 2 binomials. So let's do that real fast. How do we do this? Well, we know x squared will just be an x and an x. This is one of our quicker problems. and negative 9, well, what multiplies give me 9, so I got 1 and 9, 3 and 3. And just a review from last chapter, because this value is a negative 9, then we know my signs has to be, one of these terms has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. I already know that's a fact. And let's try to figure out the rest of this problem. All right, so now which one of those values will give you a positive 8x? Well, positive 8x, then I'm going to use the 9 to be a positive 9, and then I'll use the 1 to be a negative 1. And you can check your work. I'm not going to go through the checking. You've done a lot of these problems. And now let's finish this up. All right, so how do we solve this? So what did we just learn today? The zero product property. So set one of them equal to 0. And then we have another answer when we set the other one equal to 0. Solve the problem and you're done. So subtract 9 from both sides. Game over for this one. And the last one, add 1 to both sides. And again, I told you, some of you have already seen how to do these quickly in mental math. You'll start skipping a lot of steps. So there's my 2 answers. And guess what? I know you're annoyed with me, but I want you to check your work. I want you to check to see if negative 9 is one of my solutions and if 1 is one of my other solutions. All right? It's going to be annoying for a little bit. Bear with me. We're not going to do it forever. But I just want to practice really proving to ourselves that, yes, negative 9 will make this equation true. So let's try it. Plus 8 times x minus 9. And then also it gives you some good work with some fractions sometimes. So negative 9, let's see what we get. Negative 9 squared is 81. Positive 8 times negative 9 is negative 72. And subtract 9. And we got 9 minus 9, and we are done. 0 equals 0. Good job. Try the next one. X squared plus 8x minus 9 equals 0. Well, is 1 a solution? If we substitute a 1 in here, will we get a true equation? Let's see. Plug in a 1 here, substitute a 1 there, and we're going to get 1 squared, which is 1, and 8 times 1, which is 8. And yes, I can already see it. 9 minus 9, which is 0, and 0 equals 0. Game over. I am happy. All right, good luck. I want you to pause the video. Try problems number 2. After you're done, resume the video, and then try problem number 3. So you got a couple practice problems to see if you can handle this, and we'll move on from there. Good luck.